Okay. Hello and welcome to the Office Hours Broadside Fundraiser. My name is Greg Newton, and I am the co-founder of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, the queer bookstore that is in the center, but has been closed since March 13th. My partner, Donnie Jochum, and I founded it in 2012, and we've been at the LGBT Center in Manhattan since 2014. And during the shutdown since March 13th, we've been doing virtual events and we launched an online store, which is super exciting. I'm going to share that with you ever so briefly. And here we go. So bgsqd.com/store. And you can find books by some of your favorite poets here. So please check it out and buy some books from us. It helps support us so we can do things like this. So we appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who donated. Actually, today the Bureau is not taking a cut of the donations. It's all going to office hours for the fellows. So this is a full-on office hours fundraiser. And now I will turn it over to the queen of office hours, Sarah Sala. Give it up.
Thank you so much, Greg. It really is meaningful. This is our first fundraiser ever. It's taken us a couple years to get, off the ground. We started in the back of a bar, just, 3 poets, all that good stuff. And we've really, really grown since. So I'm gonna read you a really fun statement about fundraisers because we love them, or sorry, our sponsors. So this event is made possible in part with public funds from Creative Engagement, supported by the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, in partnership with the City Council, administered by Lower Manhattan Cultural Council. So if you've heard me talk about LMCC, we love you. They paid our stipends to our poets and to our artists. Also, we got support from the Bureau, from Greg, who houses us, who facilitates these events. We would normally be in person. We plan to put these broadsides all over the walls there. And so now we're just broadcasting them out to you. And this is an international event too, which is very exciting. The other piece that I was going to say is, as you know, tonight we paired up 8 LGBTQ poets with visual artists to craft broadsides, showcasing these remarkable poems. And all the sales go towards funding our current poetry fellows. So we want to pay people to write, which we have been doing in small spurts, fits and starts so far. We also get grants from poets and writers as well to pay our poetry craft class leaders, which is fantastic. Office Hours Poetry Workshop provides post-MFA poets continued support for manuscript development and everyday writing. We welcome all poets, especially poets of color, queer poets, and those who are femme-identified. Our name derives from our side hustle. Many of us are freelance adjunct instructors who continue to thrive in the margins of academia. So that's a little bit about us. We would love to recruit more poets. We have a website, which we will be sharing freely tonight. So I'm going to announce our first pairing tonight. Our first pair is Benjamin Garcia and Brandon Minky. So y'all can take over, take the wheel.
Alrighty, so thank you for having me and thank you all for being here. This is really, really awesome. I'm so excited to share this work with you. Also because the broadside is really, really amazing. I don't know if I'm in the wrong view because I can't see if it's up there.
Let me share it for you now. I'll put that up here.
Yeah, this was a poem that I wrote back in like 2016, 17 in response to the Trump presidency and feeling sort of hopeless, and unfortunately sort of become more relevant in some ways. So it kind of, I don't know, with like Corona and stuff, Wednesday, all of that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and read it, and I can't wait to hear what Brandon has to say. So, Postcard from the Apocalypse. Neither was it fire, neither ice. It was the undecided, indifferent time of lukewarm, undrinkable water in the faucets while we snaked new pipes for crude. Our toilets flooded, bathroom, basement, house, flooded streets, though no one seemed to mind. We didn't need Venice anymore. It was okay because this was yet another new way of being left alone, connected. One of those is what we always wanted. With Bitcoins, we could buy it. Your wish list turning on a spit. We traded viruses like viruses. Cash was our cash crop. We could 3D print our darkest thought. We made it. Diamonds, islands, climate, but we were not citizens of the earth. Or if we were, global warming deported us anyway. It was okay. We found a new peak, Beidou. Stocks, ratings, people high, and reality TV was the new public office. Our phones voted, our cars made phone calls, computers drove our cars, and even teddy bears spied on our families. Corporations turned the people like a coin between thumb, index, middle finger. Oh yeah, it was when the middle finger was our way of saluting our leaders. Forgive us, we didn't know what we had done to deserve to be nice to each other. So we weren't. We ate the world like a cold plum. We found a new center, Yates, Pound. From the pit we wave, hello.
So I will say thank you so much, first of all, to Sarah and to the Bureau of General Services Queer Division and the sponsors that Sarah mentioned earlier. This was all such a fabulous opportunity. And thanks, of course, to Benjamin for his words that I got to play with. So this is my first sort of artist talk as such, because I'm not a professional artist. I'm a grad student in English literature. And so really the visual has always been an obsession of mine that has extended into way into my childhood. And so in some ways I see the visual as being this sort of ladder that connects both the past and the present. And I thought Benjamin's poem here does something very similar in the way that it was written in 2018, but it seems very prescient in the way that it sort of predicts Trump's presidency has evolved. And, with the phrase, we traded viruses like viruses, it seems both unusually prescient, but also perennial in its concerns. And so in sort of coming up with a broadside design for it, I sort of do this with every broadside I've designed, most of which have been instigated by Sarah. I sort of experiment with all sorts of different design possibilities, and then I present them all to the poet, which I think is often a very overwhelming approach to graphic design. I think when I did design for C.A. Conrad for Sarah's book launch, I delivered, I think, 50 something designs to them. So I'm kind of, I'm a maximalist in many respects. And so if it's okay, I'll share sort of an alternative design I had come up with for Benjamin. Hopefully you all are seeing this, yes? Because I was really captivated by this line of his about, we didn't need Venice anymore. And I was also really struck by this sort of irreverent attitude towards one's sort of canonical forebearers like Yeats and Pound. And so one of the experiments I came up with was like, I'm gonna pick on Whistler and have Benjamin's words sort of cascade across this sort of very romantic depiction of Venice sort of inundate his image, which I singed and caught on fire and did all these crazy things too. The design that was picked for the exhibition, I think occupies a similar ethos, because I chose Albrecht Dürer's woodcut from 1511, The Apocalyptic Woman, because one of the ways that I thought about addressing his poem was the format of the postcard. It seemed very natural. And, you know, this is a sort of readily available relationship between the visual and the verbal, which is, I guess I should mention, is also what I focus on in my research as a literary scholar. I focus a lot on how poets and painters sort of interconnect and how the visual and verbal imbricate. And so I was just so tantalized by the idea of creating my own postcard, which would include, you know, designing my own sort of postal paratext, like a stamp, and thinking about the different orientations that are contained within the postcard as format. And so, so yeah, I picked Dürer's woodcut, The Apocalyptic Woman. It was initially going to be part of the stamp design, but I sort of didn't like the way it fit the frame. And so I wound up picking this illustration of the Apocalyptic Woman from the Hortus Delicarum, which is the first visual encyclopedia created by women, by nuns. So she became the stamp and the sort of thing that would send the poem out into the world. And she's sort of this maternal figure. Art making for me is very much connected to a sort of maternal ethos, partly because my mother was the one who encouraged me to keep at making artwork, even though, while also encouraging me to pursue more lucrative avenues of employment, with jokes on her. I mean, being a grad student still. And so, yeah, I was sort of I sort of developed all these different iterations. There were 8 in total. A lot of them dealt with this sort of Venice idea. But this past week on New Year's Day, we lost power because of this ice storm, and I still had one design left to finish. And I'd had Dürer's woodcut available to me because I downloaded it previously, and I was like, well, maybe I'll stick that into the field of the sort of message in the postcard design, and Benjamin's poem could be sort of the solvent that eats away at Dürer's design, and sort of be a both an element of apocalypse itself in a way, but also sort of sounding this clarion call, warning its readers to our current conundrum. So yeah, that's it was a fortunate sort of thing that I did at like 3 o'clock on New Year's Day night, because it was 50 degrees in our house because we didn't have power, and I needed to keep myself occupied mentally. And so I'm so pleased that it worked out in the end. Are there, Benjamin, do you have questions for me, or have I gone over my time? Or
Yeah, I mean, if Benjamin wants to jump in.
I liked hearing the process of I was just really interested in hearing what it's like to, I guess, move the other way. I'm used to ekphrasis, you know, writing a poem in response to a visual. And so it was kind of interesting to see the opposite of responding with the visual to the written word. So thank you. They were all really, really awesome options, honestly. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was so much fun.
This is amazing. Yeah, I don't know how Brandon has so much like creative like energy in his body. If I had to do this, I would be like, here's a post-it with some stick figure ideas. This one idea, I hope you like it. So it's been amazing for me to see this process too. Awesome. So our next group here, we're gonna go to Crystal Valentine and Mish Na, and I'll share screen with their broadside.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, Sarah, so much for helping to put this together. Thank you also to the amazing, poets and visual artists who got together to do this. And thank you also to Mish. Mish lives in London, and I'm currently in Boston right now. So we have this weird time difference of like everything going on in the world. And I'm just so happy that we were able to get together to do this. I think that the poem is pretty self-explanatory. Sometimes I write poems and I wish that the need for the poem expires. But unfortunately, when thinking about police brutality, when thinking about Black death, when we're thinking about, everything that's going on in the election in the White House, these poems always continues to, come back up and become necessary. So I'm going to just read it now. In response to the friends who say I write too many Black poems, a man, woman, child died today, yesterday, tomorrow. They looked just like me. I still call their names. These Black poems are how I put flowers on their graves. It is a slow burn when your own people mistake your love for anger, mistake your self-preservation for a cliche. When Misha and I got together and we were trying to decide on the design for the broadside, I told her that I wouldn't be opposed to kind of having a very soft kind of, just like a soft image to accompany the poem alongside something that's a bit more harder, and I think that we went with pink because I think that Black folk deserve to be soft. I think we deserve that. And then Mish, I'm gonna just pass it over to you. Maybe if you want, you can talk about that softness or just talk about your process for the design in general.
Definitely. I think what really struck me when I read your poem was the feminine gaze of your words, of the sentiments, of the feelings. And I thought there's nothing stronger than leaning into that softness. And I think especially with art, actually, like visual art, people tend to shy away from something that looks pretty, something that looks pleasing to the eye, because I think it feels easy, but it's not. It doesn't have to be. And without that, you couldn't enjoy the. I believe in equal and opposites. You can't enjoy the hardness without the softness. Does that make sense? So I think to have both juxtapositioning is like really important, and I think that's what kind of struck me when I read your words, that's the feeling I needed to sort of engage with in the visuals.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to also note that in the kind of like the flower, like the watercolor flower that's on there, we were also kind of playing with what can grief look like. I think that grief you know, looks like so many different things. But I wanted to kind of think about what grief looks like over extended amount of time, like almost exhausted grief. This poem personally is very exhausting. I wrote it over 10 years ago, and I'm exhausted that it's still relevant now. So I think that's also what we were getting or trying to get in the design.
Yeah, and it's I don't know if I don't know if it's actually relevant, but Sarah might have a sort of witchy, sort of psychic connection that I actually do work with flowers myself as a medium outside of my sort of painting, and there's something so beautiful about something that is ephemeral. It doesn't last forever, and the process of it decaying and it grows from its decay. There is something that connects to grief in that, because from grief something grows, and it's like a cyclical motion of like, you know, you go into the grief and then you come out of the grief, and I think flowers really represent that in your poem.
Thank you.
Love how those two tie together. Yeah, that's amazing. In terms of the witchiness, I think it's so easy almost to pair folks together, and not easy in that sense, but there's just a good, like, there's some kind of electricity that comes off my antennae to know who's going to work well together. And I think so many different pairings could occur too. I'm just struck by how special it feels like to have everyone speaking in conversation here. So thank you all. Our next pair is, oh yes, you can clap, you can do jazz hands, you can put your favorite lines in the chat. I'll do my best to post the PayHip like web links too. Our next pair is Cristina Quintana, CQ, and Esteban Delgado.
Hello. Oh my God, y'all. These are just like so beautiful. I realized I was too late, but I didn't get to also say that I loved Brandon and Benjamin's collaboration. So this is an older poem of mine. I was really thrilled to get to work with Esteban on this because I've really admired his paintings for a long time. And kind of weirdly, I think he knows this, but I wrote this poem for my dad, and he sort of looks like a younger version of my father. Who's no longer with us. But this is kind of like this piece is sort of the back of and it stems from in a class when I was someone asked in my religion class whether Jesus was white, and the religion teacher pointed at me and said, no, actually he would have had skin like Christina's, and it's just like one of those moments that's never left my mind. And just like as the daughter of immigrants, it's just something that I thought about my dad's journey a lot and the things he went through. So yeah, so it's called King or Queen Tana, and that's a reference to my last name, which is Quintana, which can be pronounced both ways, depending on your understanding of Spanish. My last name is different from yours, though it looks the same. I see you, little boy, dreaming of sailboats and horses, but becoming a doctor instead, covered up in other with no way out. Oh, if I could take your hand, you there floating in sadness, and tell you in perfect Spanish that you are enough. No, your Jesus-colored skin couldn't save you, but it didn't make you wrong. I am just going to jump in with Esteban here. And I know he was curious about, wanted to talk about what it was like working with text, and how is this like your usual work, and how did it diverge? So thank you, Esteban. Thank you, Sarah.
My pleasure to be able to collaborate with CQ to create this. For me, I found it very challenging. I'm a painter, and I would say a graphic designer is the least that I am. So working with text is very challenging for myself. I started off the wrong way and just started, of course, I started with Christina's poem, but I started thinking about the design first off, and then I realized, wait, let me start pulling some elements from Christina's poem, and I think that's going to be like the way to go about this design. And so I had to, of course, think about some imagery that I wanted to incorporate. And I started with the title, King or Queen. And so the design that you see on the left side came from initial design of a crown. And so that kind of is part of my work, is my work always evolves. It'll be maybe 20 paintings before it becomes its final. And I work very intuitively. And so I don't have like a vision of what it's going to look like at the end, which can be very frustrating because you don't know, like, when is it finished, right? And so that's just the process that the work is working within this intuitive process. So I started with the idea of the crown, and reading through the poem, it felt like the idea behind it was being compartmentalized into these things. So I decided to create my process in that idea. So I created a grid. I created this in Photoshop, and I opened up a grid. And so I used that grid to kind of build these shapes and kind of evolved around there. But yeah, the poem, I had to put that poem in first to kind of figure out where everything else was going to sort of build around there and evolve from. But yeah, I found it very difficult to work with text, and then also just deciding what font to use. I'm very much a formalist, right? My work focuses on shapes and colors, the very bare minimum, and so those things that are barely there, those minimal things, are the things that have to communicate those ideas. And so it's very important to think about what those things are when they're the only things that are there.
Very cool.
CQ, did you have any other questions for me?
And I just think it was cool. It's cool to even hear about how you did that, because the original design was so different. So I was kind of curious, like how you ended up coming from like that version to this version. But I just love it. I mean, I love your geometric sort of pieces. Like, I just think it's cool to hear about how you got to it. Especially as a writer, I tend to I work similarly. So it's kind of cool to hear about that. Like, you as an artist sort of have a similar sort of intuitive process. It's really neat.
Yeah, I kind of see it as the idea of play, right? And like I have a 2-year-old daughter, and when she plays, she explores and she investigates. Can I fit this into this? I kind of see my work in that vein, where I'm exploring and I'm investigating. Can this fit here? How do these colors relate to each other? What does this color make this other color do when it's right beside it? And so like certain yellows or pinks, I'll go through maybe hundreds of variations to kind of see what happens when one color is next to the other. And I think that kind of relates to when you talk about like the skin tones, right? Being the right skin tone or having to fit in, right? Like that's kind of course, those things kind of tend to relate to each other, but yeah, I kind of see my work as play, just kind of intuitive working and seeing how things work out in the end.
Oh my God, I love that. Thank you for that insight. I loved hearing about of course, that you'd be thinking about skin tone and how that works into, and now I'm looking at it in a whole new way. Thank you so much.
It's so amazing to hear about thinking about how a child plays and how that works in with, configurations, all that great stuff too. Our next pairing is C.A. Conrad and Umang Antares Sagar. C.A. is going to take the wheel here and share a screen because they're amazing.
Oh, that's very nice. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. These are beautiful. Hello from Seattle. Do you mind? I'm going to read 2 tiny new little poems and then the other poem. These 2 first little poems are going to be coming out in a book later this year from a UK publisher in London called Ignota. Sarah Shin, if you know her, she's dynamite. very witchy poet. Okay, can you see that? What would it take to kill the imagination? It is important to wonder what our enemies are already thinking. You are so much blood, I love you. Your force, the force of blood. We give our thanks to the engineer of this meadow. Can you hear how it is flowing through our door, flooding, a better word? Sections of the day peel away to our curative vigor. We were going to be okay. We just did not know it at the time. A focus, I mean a compass, attempting to understand our renewal of winter before we enter the dance. Signing a contract to control the wind, new arrivals wishing a ladle of the stuff. On the phone he asks, will you hold me like that again? Track ourselves through the made-up portion of a song. We are the other side of transmitting sound into future warmth. Will you do it, he asks. I've got the wind, I say, with both hands. So now I'm going to show you that this is not the beautiful version that Umang made, but I just feel like I'd be able to read from this one a little better. This is the poem, that's the broadside. I absolutely love the broadside. I can't wait for you to see it. And so I just wanted to very, very, very briefly say that this poem is coming out of, back in the 1980s and 90s, I lost about half of everybody I knew to AIDS. And so that was something that was on my mind with this. Glitter in my wounds. First, and most important, dream our missing friends forward. Burn their reflections into empty chairs. We are less bound by time than the clockmaker fears. This morning, all I want is to follow where the stone angels point. Birdsong lashing me to tears. Heterosexuals need to see our suffering, the violent deaths of our friends and lovers. To know glitter on a queer is not to dazzle, but to unsettle the foundation of this murderous culture. Defiant weeds smashing up through cement. You think Oscar Wilde was funny? Well, darling, I think he was busy distracting straight people so they would not kill him. If you knew how many times I've been told, you're not like my gay best friend who tells me jokes and makes me laugh. No, I sure as fuck am not. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep hearing something. I'm distracted. Let me start back at that. Maybe back up. I think there's a microphone on. If you knew how many times I've been told, you're not like my gay best friend who tells me jokes and makes me laugh. No, I sure as fuck am not. I have no room in my life to audition for your pansy mascot. You people can't kill me and think you can kill me again. I met a tree in Amsterdam and stood barefoot beside it for 20 minutes, then left completely restored. Yet another poem not written by a poet. Sometimes we need one muscle to relax so the others follow. My friend Mandy calls after a long shift at the strip club to say, while standing in line for death, I am fanning my hot pussy with your new book. Will you sign it next week, my fearless faggot sister? Thank you. Umang, I'm very excited to talk with you and hear what you have to say about your choices.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you to CA for your incredible work and everyone who's come before. I'm so fascinated by hearing about all of you. So yeah, would someone put that up? Thank you for putting it up. I mean, there was just so much like both grief, but all this imagery in CA's work. And as you, what was exciting to see your other work, CA, was like, there's always this like shape to your writing that I didn't really want to mess with at all. In fact, I don't even think I changed the font when I was doing it because I was like, I don't want to shift anything about the way you've written it. I wanted to really keep it intact. And so, and in the work, I tried to follow to follow the shapes that you already had in there. And also what stood out to me so deeply was the grief in the poem. And and it's called Glitter in My Wounds. And so I wanted to I wanted to feel sparkly, but also wanted to feel the grief of it. And so when I was feeling through it, I was like, there has to be this wound that's full of possibility inside it. Is what I heard most deeply. There was something within the wound that was living, that was the pain, but also the salvation. That's how what came through for me. And so the imagery, which was that stone angel pointing, and we had a back and forth about this a little bit, CA, which was I wanted it to point back into the wound, where the tree that gave you calm and the lost friends represented by the chairs, which is again in your poem. So my intention was the stone angels pointing back to the wound as your place of liberation is what I was feeling when I was reading through your words. And I know we had a conversation about whether it should look upwards or not. But I felt like it was not about going up to heaven, it was going back to yourself. And so those were the conversations that we had. And I wanted it to, I work in my own practice. I do a lot of like works with universe imagery and possibility and hope and expansion. And so like I wanted to incorporate those pieces in and keep the grief of it alive, which I was hearing strongly. And so this was my interpretation, to keep it in this like outer space, expansive space, but also keep the wound as a focus in the piece. Yeah.
I love that you put it in outer space. I love everything. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your work.
And I like that you have the angel pointing back up to the wound.
Yeah. I was like, I needed that to be in conversation with something. And the wound is the most the most pressing image, I felt. So that was some of my process of like really sitting with the imagery that you had. It took me a while to come up with the pieces that I wanted to have in there, because I was sitting with, there was like so many vivid images that was sitting with me, and I was like, and I pulled up the pieces that felt like from that resonated so deeply with me, and I worked from there.
I love how in the tear and that wound, there's a completely different universe behind there or something. It's kind of fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for your amazing work.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. See you. Yeah.
The neat thing for me too is I think a lot of folks didn't even know each other before these collaborations. I just looped people in over email and said, have fun. And they did in amazing ways. So I got to preview all these broadsides coming in. And I would call to CQ, who's my partner, and say, come here and look at this. Look at my screen. These are amazing. Can't wait to share them. So now we're going to go to Omatara James and Sai Klipsch Abdu. I don't think Sai is with us yet. Sai, you can totally prove me wrong and unmute. So Omatara, you're going to read and hold down the fort for your artist also. Let me share a screen here. All right. You can take the wheel.
Okay. Thank you so much. I just love hearing the poetry and also like the artist talk behind the broadsides. It's really neat. Very grateful to be included with this beautiful group of artists. And office hours, you just do so much good work. And thank you for that. And thank you for staying the course during this pandemic. It's a testament to goodwill, so thank you. I'm going to read my poem, Self-Portrait as a Queer Block Party. It's a poem I wrote a couple years ago, and you know, some poems are you write out of need, some poems you write out of desire. This was a poem that I wrote not only from experience, but also aspirational in a way, because I was taking like an event. The occasion for the poem is the title of the poem, the block party. But also I was using that occasion as a lens to create more space for myself. And that's the work that I'm always trying to do, to create more space for myself as a way of survival. And then, you know, the rest will follow. Self-portrait as a queer block party. Your fat spills soft across the moonlit crown of grass. Your soulmates are a gaggle of fish, shoaling thick, until you are schooled enough in this love. The hours left before sunrise are shimmering scales, marked for the net, long cast. Before you learned time had an end. Bodies so true, joy pools behind the ears and around the clavicles like jewels, like fucking jewels. Speakers blast the humid sky like firecrackers in June. You take the first hand, then hip with you through the dance, glide until you find the body you abandoned measurements ago. You travel it with your partner, their unshaved armpits bleached seaweed green, their bare midriff a silk thicket, their saffron robe a protection against the binary of day or night. An inch of belly leaps beyond your shirt like a flying fish in silver light. So thank you. Although I cannot speak to the process of making the broadside, I can speak to the impact, the visual impact. And I mean, succinctly, it's perfect. I shared that what I, you know, try to do is create space. You know, a poem is a container for, you know, so many competing desires and realities. And what I love about the visual of this broadside is that there's definitely a futurist look to it. I don't know if you can scroll up, but the collage that appears at the top in a way is quite surreal. And what I love about collage is that, like, the layering effect to me implies multiple realities. And also there's something about not being able, like, making the most of what you have, being resourceful. You know, that's what I think of when I think about collage. And I think the same applies to our experience, whether it's disappointment in love, whether it's tragedy, whether we have to be, as artists, no matter what our medium is, we have to be in a way resourceful and resilient, right? That's the work of the art. So if you look here at the broadside, so much of the composition consists, I don't know if you can zoom in on, like, the green, maybe like blue, like it's, I reckon it's digitally done, but there are like grooves there. And I really loved that added texture because I thought, well, you know, that could be a signal for the grass, right? But also, if you, like, I speak about, you know, school of fish, so it could also be like the sea. So it's kind of, it lends itself to being abstract. So I love the juxtaposition of the abstract background with the figure and in the collage, and that figure to me is just really kind of breathtaking because it's at the top of the composition, and, you know, we don't see the eyes, but still there's such an authority, you know, in their presence, in the face, even if in the cheekbones. So I just really am quite thrilled that I was paired with Sai, because I think they did a great job, and I love it.
Thank you so much, Omatara. I love hearing everyone talk about their different takes on, you know, the way that we're approaching these broadsides and what's most meaningful to them. It's such a gift. So I'll stop us in our series just for a brief moment to say, if you feel moved today, if you want this art to hang on your wall, we've been posting links in the chat, right? Every single dollar, I think we have to pay taxes. That's probably the only money that will go away from this. And by I think, the IRS is like, yes, you will. But that's the only money that will take from this pool. Everything else will literally go to either paying an artist or a poet from these sales. So it would be amazing to support them. Our next pair is Alexis Garcia and Reba Joy. I will share.
Hello. Hi. Yeah, feel free to share the screen. I'm so happy to be here today. Office Hours Poetry has been such a blessing in my life. I was able to attend a workshop with Jericho Brown at the Bureau, which was amazing. And I also got to read at the Bureau in front of a wall of leather harnesses. And that was such a dream, such a dream. So I'm really excited to be here and to be in conversation with Reba as well, who has just been such a joy to work with, true to Reba's name. So yeah, without further ado, I'll read this poem. And I just want to shout out, it was my abuelo, Luis Garcia's birthday yesterday. He would have been 97. So this feels also like a conjuring of sorts. So yeah. Sitting with abuelo at the family ghost table. I am poured a shape, my child face a blood fruit blossom from the pesticide of his work boot. My boca full of licuado till I rojo, body a brittle husk plucked from the stalk of Garcia, born with a pit planted in my green-red cheek. Who else will make the plate of our story? I take his seat in the field, roll the spoiled mango back to its tree. Yeah, so I guess there's some context to this poem that I'd love to share before we get into the conversation with Reba, that actually I'm sure Reba will talk about how it informed the design as well. But this poem was written out of a need to kind of connect myself to my grandfather, who was a bracero and worked the land for his entire life. So I'm trying to write a collection honoring my lineage, and this was the hardest one to write. There's so much that happens at the dinner table in my life with my ancestors and with my living family. And so I tried to imagine this kind of alternate table where I am being formed and shaped. And so with that, Reba, I would love to hear from you about the process of engaging with the poem and how it changed, enhanced, or deepened your initial interpretation of it.
Hi, thank you. So at first, like before we actually started talking, I just started making based off of what I read. But after I heard about your abuelo from your words and like picking up on the energy in the words, it really was just a love letter of his life and his love for his family. So wanting to show that he is the light that created this platform for his family to continue to live on and into the future. And I think in hindsight, that's why we both liked the handcrafted typeface. It's because he worked with his hands. Yeah, so it really is just about trying to share his love for his family and honor him and his life through the visuals.
Reba, I'm so grateful for you. It's so beautiful. I was wondering too, I know that we've gone through a few versions and you were saying how you kind of got lost in the sunshine. If you could talk a little bit more about that.
He just feels like he was the light. And that's why I tried to like draw his face in the sun, because it's about him and this glowing love that he has for his people. Like everything that he did was for you to be here right now, able to flourish and thrive. So it just felt right. And like, I didn't even realize that that's not what you intended in your feedback. I realized it afterwards. I was like, oh, well, it just made sense. And I just didn't read it correctly. But I think it was as it was supposed to be. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think that misread led to this like beautiful, I couldn't see it any other way. Although it was really hard to choose, really hard to choose between the other versions as well. Just for y'all at home, there was this beautiful version of like the face within like the mango that you see on the table. And it was just, ooh, I don't know. I am actually probably going to print that alternate version as well to hang up and give as gift. So I appreciate that so much, Reba. And thank you so much, Sarah, as well.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, I'm just admiring, even on the digital version here, just the crease and like y'all were saying, the texture of this background. There's so much here. It's beautiful. Oh yeah, there's all kinds of like behind the scenes secret versions that I'm a fan of. Yeah, there can be a multiplicity of love here coming through these broadsides. Our next pairing is Marty Correa and Cherie Weldon.
Hi, I'm going to first thank Sarah and Greg and the Bureau and all the wonderful artists and poets that we're hearing today, especially during all this time when we don't know what's going on and we're upset. Like, it's so cool to think that people were collaborating and setting things aside to just be in this world that we're creating, which is what it's all about. I'm going to read my poem and then have a couple words to say before Cherie, sorry. See, I even made this, like Cherie Weldon talks to you. Be present. I love, I work, I am unremarkable, like a small pond off the Mass Pike. I'm here. This is not a reckoning. It's only me, a neon sign, flickering into noon. I'm glad that Omatara mentioned the what happens in life, people creating space for themselves. And when I think about this poem, that's what I think about, that it's a poem from the space that I've been given, or a space that I've taken, or just the space I'm in. And sometimes when I see it, I think, oh, it's so stiff and it's so New England. And I was like, well, that's me. I'm New England. I'm from New England. And so anyway, so the great thing about this poem is that I put it out into the world, and it was published in KGB literary magazine, and then it had its life there. And then when Sarah asked if I'd take part in this great project, the first person I thought of was Cherie, and I just, in fact, I didn't even give Sarah a chance to pair me with anybody. I'm kind of a masshole that way. I was just like, this is what I want. So then I sent a couple of poems to Cherie, and I'm so glad she picked this one for a lot of reasons. And the form that it's in, which I'm going to let her speak now completely about it, but I just want to tell her that I'm so appreciative that she printed these on do-rags, because I think do-rags are a form of self-care, a form of identity. And there were so many of my friends, when I tell them, they're like, oh my God, I want one. And I feel like it's one of those things where I could never imagine that when I sent this poem into the world, then it would be in a form that I'd be able to give to my friends who I appreciate who are, Black people who don't necessarily have, have people thinking about their self-care. And so it started a conversation with a couple of people, and I'm sure it's going to just continue. And that's what we're about to do, is to hear from Cherie on this. So Cherie, I'd love to hear more about how you came up with this form and all of that. Thanks.
Can you hear me? Everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, I'm just I'm really appreciative for as long as I've known Marty and Kate that they Marty asked me to collaborate on this with her. I'm just thankful to be here, to be awakened by hearing about the Broadside, and awakened and have all this wonderful work presented to me, and to hear. I'm from Seattle. It was just wonderful to hear all these artists from London, Boston, and Seattle. But when I read the poem, I thought immediately about that. Even though Marty and I didn't meet until here in New York, I thought about that I lived in Boston. It was one of the first places that I had left Seattle, not being supported by my family by being gay. And I'm really into map making. And so I thought about like how these words, Marty and I had sort of crossed, and we have this this path where we're connected. And being connected, I wanted this do-rag to be the fabric, and to use my map making artwork to sort of illuminate her words, or, you know, actually her words illuminate my art, you know. And I downloaded the files of the Mass Turnpike, and I imported neon colors into them. But I also, even though they talked about the poem focuses, or it mentions the Mass Turnpike, and that what you see here where Marty's name is at the bottom, that is actually a piece of a suburb from where Breonna Taylor was you know, assaulted by the police. And so I wanted to have that sort of, that neon sign, you know, that sort of that presence of like connecting it also to civil rights, to women's rights, to you know, have her words be something that's always flickering, it's always on, it's always illuminating. And that's how I sort of broke that up, and I brought in the neighborhood of Breonna Taylor Mass Turnpike. But the do-rag is a very special, you know, piece of cloth, because Black people would wear them while they worked in the fields. They would work them to mark themselves, so they would be distinguished between different family members, different tribes. And we now know that the do-rag has been subverted in our culture, where everybody's wearing them. And I thought, you know, how amazing would it be to put Marty's poetry, to put her words on this do-rag, and maybe have somebody wear this on their head like a tribe, you know, carrying this through our society. And I have a whole bunch. So anybody that wants them, you know, if the Broadside wants them and wants to give them away or wants to sell them, Marty wants them, you know, please get in touch with me. They're not going to be alike. They're not repeatable, because the way I work, they might have the same imagery, but they're not the same. The way I lay them out, I have different colors. You know, I printed them on all different sort of white, pink, green. You know, I printed them on all different types of. So like Marty's work, like the artist here, this work is always in transition. It's always growing. It's always moving. And I just don't know what more I could say. I'm just really glad to be a part of this and to just to see all this beautiful work and to have this this work living as a living document to Marty's and to all the poems, you know, here. So.
Amazing. I love the idea of wearing poems on the body, wearing all that history on the body, having it be a visual marker for folks. That's so beautiful and something I never could have predicted with this. It's amazing. So we'll make sure that link gets posted, absolutely. And our last pairing of the evening, I can't believe we've gotten here so far, is Ricardo, Alberto, Maldonado, Numang, Antares, Cigar.
Hello, everyone. If you will excuse me, I am reading from my phone, but also looking at my computer. I'm really grateful that my poem was rendered and translated into visual form by Umang. This is a poem that was written. The title comes from graffiti I saw on the train, on the A train. I keep forgetting the name of the station because what are trains now? But although I take them all the time to see doctors and physical therapy, etc. But so the title is perhaps 2-3 years old. So it's of the Trump era, which thank God is coming to an end. The title is in Spanish, and I take it to mean free the children, but a part of me feels like whoever wrote this didn't have a firm grasp of Spanish. Libre los niños. Of the got little, I have got what I can sell, enough being dirtier now being effeminate. I am bringing progress for centuries, a whole cosmos under lights flooding the clouds, finding silence. It's July in a quarantine city. More I could count now. I've come to blank out a calculating machine. Threads, little gas tanks, gas stoves are ours now. Ours, they won't fit in the hands. Calm down, repeatedly order the land, stop trembling. And when I take my pills, cold and penitent, clearing something impossible like a country inside, a country of free enterprise, transnational enterprise. A civil guard to bear arms, bear the markets, asphodels and arms while children sleep, and books for the ailments of the land, sick with houses we loved so much, made them a government, made children uproot asphodels from graves using the arm right. It was July when July moored on land. More time you have given me, fellow sufferer. Calm down, pain, calm down. For these things a name becomes free to lend a last. Made one rung from me unto others, on water, on air, folds down a maple crown. Am I less to you, my country, than they were in your past? Don't give up, my everything, don't give up. City is found inside, a weight of a city is lighter. I am more than your exodus, clearing in ash. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. Yeah, I mean, thank you for writing that, and when in the beginning when I read it, I couldn't get over the. If you could scroll up a little bit, sorry, I couldn't get over the I am bringing progress for centuries, a whole cosmos under lights flooding the clouds. I read it a few times, and I kept getting overwhelmed by that. Like, I am bringing, with all the anxiety and like this desire to calm down, there was just like this, the thing that you're bringing through all of this, through all the feeling. So I felt so overwhelmed by that. So I felt like I wanted to have that be expressed on the page. as much as I could. And so, and the colors, I feel like I was inspired by what you had shared with me, Ricardo, which was about the sign that you had seen and how that made you, how you responded to that sign. And so then I intuitively kind of took the colors from there, which was started with the yellow and then moved around a little bit. Yeah, and so I think I was just the clouds and the cosmos was just like it really I wanted because it stayed with me so strongly. I wanted that to be the overwhelming feeling as we talked through all the things that you were bringing into the piece. Yeah, that's what I was feeling.
Yeah, and I'm grateful because that's really the spirit of the. I mean, this is a poem about feeling overwhelmed by all the language streams of the Trump era. So.
Yeah. So having the overwhelming feeling.
Yeah, and trying to find something like release, right? So, and I feel like your translation covered that, like pointed to that.
Yeah. I felt like there was like an intuitive sense of that in the poem so strongly, and even in like your clouds and your writing, how you wrote it out yourself. Yeah. So I just felt like it was a natural response from me.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you all. Thank you for these love letters of art to each other. Thank you to Greg at the Bureau for providing physical space, spiritual space. Thank you to LMCC for putting money in poets, I would say hands, but everything's like so virtual now, for Venmoing money to people. I don't know. I'm just blown away, y'all. This was beautiful. If you were moved, buy a broadside, buy one as a gift for someone. That's what we have for you. So I'll leave the feed up for a moment. Y'all can chat or you can peace out. But please stay safe. Practice some good self-care. All right.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And I'll post this recording on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So if you know anyone who couldn't make it, they can check out the video.
Thanks.
Bye, y'all.